I never planned to come back to Ridgeview. That town always felt too small, like a snow globe someone forgot to shake. Quiet, predictable, and full of faces that never changed. But when my job offer in Portland got delayed and my mom begged me to help with the fall festival, I figured one weekend wouldn't kill me. The last Saturday of October 2021 started off perfectly normal. The air was cold but crisp, the kind that smells faintly of wood smoke and wet leaves. I arrived at the high school football field around 5:30, right when the sun started dipping behind the hills. Every year the town went all out for the festival: hay rides, caramel apples, a haunted barn, and fireworks after dark. My mom always said it was Ridgeview's way of pretending nothing bad ever happened there. They stationed me at the entrance gate. "You'll do fine," said Tom Keller, the night security supervisor. He'd worked there for decades. Big guy, soft-spoken, always had a thermos of coffee in hand. "Just scan tickets and keep an eye out for any kids sneaking in." "Right," I said, zipping my jacket. So, the usual small-town chaos. By 6, the crowd poured in. Families in fleece jackets, kids in plastic costumes. Teenagers pretending to be too cool but still taking selfies under the string lights. Everything looked peaceful, safe, normal. Then, around 6:15, I noticed the van. It was parked just beyond the floodlights, half in shadow, the engine idling softly. A white delivery van. No logos, no plates visible from where I stood. I assumed it belonged to one of the food vendors, but something about it didn't sit right. The headlights were off, yet I could see a faint figure in the driver's seat. Every time I glanced that way, I swore the silhouette turned its head slightly, like it knew I was watching. At first, I brushed it off. You grow up in a town like Ridgeview, your imagination has to work overtime to make things interesting. But as the hours passed and that van never moved, the feeling stuck, cold and wrong. At 8:30, my coworker Jake nudged me. "Hey, you notice that van out there?" "Yeah," I said, lowering my voice. "Been there all night. Should have been checked already." We flagged Tom, who radioed one of his team members. "Unit 3, check the delivery van near East Fence." Static answered back. "Unit 3, come in." Still nothing. Tom sighed. Probably bad reception near the trees. But the way his jaw tightened told me he wasn't so sure. When the fireworks started at 10, the whole field tilted its gaze skyward. Kids screamed with delight as bursts of red and gold lit up the clouds. I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt watched. That's when I saw it, the van's side door sliding open. A man stepped out. He wore a navy blue janitor's uniform with a stitched name tag that read, Martin. The Ridgeview school didn't have anyone by that name. He carried a cardboard box filled with small white paper bags, handing them out to passing children. "Free treats from the school," he called cheerfully. Parents smiled, distracted by the fireworks. The kids reached eagerly. But something about those bags looked wrong. The school logo printed on them was off-center, the font thinner, hand-drawn. A cold weight dropped in my stomach. "Tom," I whispered. "That guy, he's not with the school." By the time we turned around, he was gone. The van door slammed shut, and the vehicle tore away from the lot, tires spraying gravel into the air. Tom and I ran to where he'd been standing. A few of the gift bags were scattered across the pavement, one ripped open. Inside were small folded papers, missing person flyers, dozens of them, all from different states. The police showed up within 15 minutes, lights flashing red and blue across the dark field. Most of the crowd had already gone home, unaware that anything had happened. They questioned everyone, collected the bags, and told us to stay put. I sat on a bale of hay, hands shaking, watching the officers comb through the lot. One of them, a young deputy with kind eyes, crouched beside me. "You said he introduced himself as Martin?" "He didn't talk to me directly," I said. "Just the kids. I only caught the name from his uniform." "Can you describe him?" "White male, maybe mid-40s, average height, shaved head. His eyes looked wrong, like he was smiling, but his eyes weren't." The deputy nodded, jotting everything down. "We'll check the security cameras from the field." Except there weren't any near the east fence. The school's old cameras hadn't worked in years. When they searched the staff lot, Unit 3's radio was found, lying near the chain-link fence covered in mud. But the guard himself, Rick Daniels, was nowhere to be found. By midnight, officers said they'd found tire tracks leading out of town. The van had headed north. The next day, news spread fast. Ridgeview wasn't used to anything darker than a shoplifting case. The headlines called it the Halloween Van Mystery. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those flyers, yellowed, creased, some decades old. Faces of children, men, women, all strangers, staring back at me. By Tuesday, the police confirmed they'd found the van abandoned 20 miles out in the woods near Benton Creek. No driver, no fingerprints. The inside was littered with candy wrappers, crumpled photos, and an old cassette labeled, "For the Ones Who Stay." I never learned what was on that tape, but something else happened, something I didn't tell anyone. That night around midnight I got a text, no number, no name, just, "Did you enjoy the show, Sophie?" The messages kept coming for weeks, always at night, always from different numbers. Still working the gate? Cute jacket at the festival. You should have taken a bag. I changed my number twice, but somehow they always found me. I started noticing vans on my street, delivery vans, plumbing vans, postal vans. I told myself they were just workers, but every time I looked too long, the driver would glance up and stare right back at me. Mom said I was paranoid. "You've been through a shock, honey. These small towns thrive on rumors. Don't let it eat at you." But she didn't get it. It wasn't just fear. It was the feeling of being seen. A detective named Sarah Hines took over the case in November. She came to my mom's house, sat across the kitchen table, and flipped open a folder thick with photos. "We think this wasn't his first appearance," she said. "Similar vans have shown up at fairs and Halloween events in 3 states. Same MO, gifts, fake logos, missing person flyers." "Did you find him?" She hesitated. "No, but we found partial fingerprints inside the Ridgeview van. They belong to multiple people. Some of them match missing persons." I felt my chest tighten. "So whoever he is, he's using their identities?" "Maybe," she said. "Or maybe he's collecting them." That word, collecting, stuck in my head like a splinter. That winter, I left Ridgeview, packed my things, moved into a small apartment in downtown Portland. New job, new start. But fear travels well. Sometimes late at night I'd hear a van idling outside my window. By the time I looked, it had be gone. One night in February my phone buzzed. Unknown number. A photo attachment. It was the Ridgeview Fairgrounds, empty, snow-covered, and in the middle of it, my old ticket booth. A single white paper bag sitting on the counter. A year passed. I thought maybe it was finally over. Then I got the letter. No return address, just a folded sheet of paper inside, written in red marker. 1 year later, let's make it right. That was enough to drag me back to Ridgeview. I told myself it was for closure, for answers, but really, I wanted to see if the van was real, or if I'd gone crazy. Tom Keller met me at the field. He looked older, slower. The festival was back on schedule, though smaller this time. "You sure about this, Sophie?" he asked. "You don't owe this town anything." "I need to see it through," I said. "I need to know what happened to Rick." That night, as the lights came up and the air filled with the sound of laughter, I stood near the east fence, the same spot as before. At 9:48 p.m., I heard it, the low growl of an engine. A white van rolled into the lot. No headlights, no plates. And this time, I didn't run. I walked toward it, flashlight trembling in my hand. The driver's window rolled down slowly. No one inside. Only a cassette tape on the dashboard. Written in red. For Sophie. Detective Hines met me the next morning. We played the tape in her office, under fluorescent light. Static filled the speakers first, then a man's voice, calm, too calm. "Hello, Sophie, you shouldn't have come back." Then, muffled cries. A man's voice, Rick's I think, pleading, "Please, just let me go." The man laughed. They never learn, do they? Always think they're helping. Then silence. And finally, "See you next Halloween." The tape ended. The police launched another investigation, but nothing came of it. The voice couldn't be traced. The van disappeared again. I moved cities twice, changed jobs, started therapy. But some nights around Halloween, I still wake to the sound of an engine outside my window. I never look anymore. Because deep down, I know that if I do, he'll be smiling right back at me. Evil rarely announces itself with fangs or fire. It hides behind kindness, routine, and trust. The free gifts we don't question. Never assume safety just because a place feels familiar. The most ordinary moments can mask the darkest intentions. And when instinct whispers, "Something's wrong," listen. It might be the only thing that saves you. People always say nothing bad ever happens on a road trip until it does. Back in 2016, I was 26 and thought the world was still small enough to fit inside a car full of friends and good music. That night, Halloween night, 5 of us left Nashville, heading toward Knoxville. It was supposed to be spontaneous, one of those last-minute ideas that turn into stories you tell for years. There was Mark, loud and full of plans he'd never finish. Priya, the cautious one with her planner app always open. Jay, the storyteller and our driver. Hannah, holding her camera like it was part of her hand. And me. Ethan, the quiet observer, the one who noticed things people usually missed. The highway stretched ahead like a dark ribbon under a bruised sky. Bonfire smoke from some distant town drifted across the road. Jay's old Toyota Camry hummed beneath us, and the dashboard clock glowed 11:40 p.m. when I first saw the white van in the mirror. It was a standard van, no logos, no plates you could read, but it followed every lane change we made. Priya said maybe it was just another traveler. Jay nodded, but he kept glancing at the rear view. After half an hour, it was still there. "Creepy," Hannah said, aiming her camera toward the back window. "Maybe it's our Halloween slasher moment." "Don't jinx it," Mark laughed, tossing an empty soda bottle on the floor. The laughter didn't feel real after that. By midnight, the gaslight blinked on. Jay took the next exit. Route 19. A 2-lane stretch lined with dark trees and the occasional billboard half lit by failing bulbs. The only open place was a Quick Mart, its open sign flickering like a dying heartbeat. We pulled in. The van passed us slowly, then circled back to park on the far side of the lot. "I'll be quick," Mark said, heading around back to the restroom. Inside, the cashier barely looked up from his TV. Priya went for snacks. Hannah filmed the empty aisles, whispering commentary for her vlog. Jay filled the tank while I stood by the pump, watching the van. Its engine idled. No one got out. 10 minutes. 15. "Where's Mark?" Jay asked. I pointed toward the back. "Hasn't come out." We went to check. That's when I saw the van again, behind the store, its back doors wide open. 2 men in dark hoodies were wrestling with Mark, trying to shove him inside. A third man leaned against the hood, smoking, like it was just another job. "Hey!" Jay yelled. The smoker turned. I'll never forget his eyes. Flat, calm, like someone watching traffic. Then a flashlight beam cut through the dark. A security guard came running, shouting, "What the hell's going on?" The kidnappers froze. Mark broke free, collapsing to the ground. The van doors slammed, and within seconds it peeled out, tires screaming, vanishing into the trees. When I helped Mark up, he was shaking. "They said I fit the profile," he whispered. "What profile?" Sirens filled the night. Police showed up, took statements, searched the lot. The only evidence they found was a cow black glove. And tire tracks leading nowhere. The camera facing the restroom had been smashed. It should have ended there. But for me, it never did. The cops filed their reports, asked the same questions in a dozen different ways. Had we noticed the van earlier? Did we see faces? Did anyone follow us before Nashville? We didn't have answers. The van had been just another vehicle until it wasn't. Mark tried to laugh it off, but I could tell he wasn't the same. Neither was I. I replayed that night over and over. How calm that driver looked. How deliberate every move had been. Weeks passed. The story ran for one night on local news. Attempted abduction on Route 19. Then it vanished, buried under election coverage and football highlights. Jay sold his Camry. He said he couldn't stand driving it anymore. Priya started therapy. Hannah deleted her vlog footage after finding something strange. A reflection in one frame. A man standing by the road, cigarette glowing, face blurred. Mark moved to Atlanta. Said he needed new air. He never talked about it again. But I couldn't stop thinking about those words. You fit the profile. I searched online, news archives, forums, missing persons boards. I found stories from Alabama, Kentucky, Georgia, similar vans, similar descriptions, always around Halloween week. Victims usually vanished. Some were found months later. Some never were. I tried sending what I found to the detective in charge. He never replied. That's when I started seeing white vans everywhere. On my way to work, at stoplights, in parking lots. Most were harmless, just electricians or delivery guys. But sometimes one would keep the same distance behind me for miles, and I'd feel that old panic rise in my chest. Jay said, "Man, you need to let it go." Maybe he was right. Maybe trauma makes you see patterns where there aren't any. Or maybe some patterns are real and the world just looks away. Halloween 2017. I told myself it was just another day, but my hands trembled every time I saw a van. I'd moved into a small apartment outside Chattanooga, worked nights at a warehouse, kept mostly to myself. That evening, Jay called. "Road trip," he said. "We're going to Knoxville again. Closure, you know." I didn't want to go, but something in me, the part still stuck behind that Quick Mart, said I had to. We met at a diner off I-40. Mark didn't show. Priya was out of state. Only Hannah came. She'd brought her camera again, saying she wanted to face it. As we drove east, the night grew colder. Somewhere near Cookville, headlights appeared behind us. White, steady, distant. My throat went dry. "Jay," I said quietly, "check the mirror." He did. His smile faded. Probably nothing. The van followed us for 30 miles. Then, when we exited toward a rest stop, it turned too. I felt every muscle lock. "This isn't happening," Hannah muttered. We parked near the lights. The van rolled by slowly, then stopped at the far end of the lot. Jay grabbed a tire iron. "Stay here." "Don't," I said. "That's what they want." We waited. The van sat there idling. After 5 minutes, its headlights shut off. A figure stepped out, smoking, just like before. That's when Hannah's camera died. Jay's voice shook. "We call the cops." "No service," Hannah said, checking her phone. The man walked toward us, slow and deliberate. Another figure appeared behind him. I opened the glove box, searching for anything. Flashlight, pocket knife, anything. My fingers brushed a black glove. I froze. Jay cursed under his breath. "That's not funny." "I didn't put it there," I said. The smoker stopped about 20 feet away. "You folks lost?" His voice was calm, too calm. Jay stepped forward. "Back off, man." The man smiled faintly. "Relax. Just asking a question." Behind him, the van's doors opened. 2 more silhouettes moved in the dark. "Get in the car," I whispered. We slammed the doors. Jay floored it. The tires screeched. The van's headlights flared behind us, gaining fast. For 20 miles we drove like that, high beams flashing, horn blaring. Then, as suddenly as it began, the van turned off onto a dirt road and disappeared. We didn't speak for the rest of the drive. We reached Knoxville just before dawn. None of us mentioned the van. We just sat in the parking lot of a gas station shaking. Jay finally said, Maybe it wasn't them. Then why follow us? Hannah whispered. I didn't answer. Because I knew. I'd read enough, seen enough. These weren't random creeps, they were organized. The same pattern, same time every year. And maybe, just maybe, they didn't stop. Hannah quit vlogging. Jay moved to Chicago. I stayed. Sometimes, late at night, I still see a white van outside my building. It never parks for long, just waits, engine running. Maybe it's in my head, maybe not. But one thing's certain. Once you've been hunted, you never stop checking the mirror. It had been raining in Manchester for 3 straight days, the kind of steady drizzle that makes everything feel soft and blurred around the edges. I'd gone to a rooftop party thrown by a coworker from the design firm where I'd just started. I was 26, new in the city, and trying to convince myself I wasn't lonely. The music was loud, the drinks were cheap, and everyone seemed to know someone else better than I knew anyone. By midnight, the crowd had thinned. I lingered, nursing a flat cider, pretending to check my phone while scrolling through nothing. I didn't want to admit it, but I was waiting for someone to notice me, or maybe for the courage to call it a night. When I finally decided to leave, the rain had picked up again. My heels slipped against the slick concrete stairs as I descended to the street. The city below was quiet, the kind of eerie stillness that comes when a party town finally exhales after midnight. I pulled my coat tighter and checked my phone. 8% battery. The bus schedule app showed I'd missed the last one. I tried the rideshare app next. No cars available in your area. I stood under a streetlight, debating between walking home or finding a cab. That's when I heard the rumble of an engine. A black taxi. Rolled slowly toward the curb, headlights cutting through the mist. The driver leaned across the seat and rolled down the window. You need a lift, love? He had a low, gravelly voice, the kind you hear from a man who's smoked for decades. His cap shadowed most of his face. Yeah, I said, stepping closer. City center, please. He nodded once. Hop in. The interior smelled faintly of tobacco and something metallic like old coins or blood, but I was too tired to care. I told myself it was just an old cab. As we pulled away, I watched the reflection of the streetlights stretch across the wet pavement. I didn't know it then, but I wouldn't sleep again for 2 nights. And when I finally did, the driver's face would haunt every dream I had. The first thing I noticed was that the meter wasn't running. Excuse me, I said, leaning forward. You forgot to start the meter. The man didn't respond. He just kept his eyes on the road. I said, shorter way. He interrupted, his voice like a saw cutting through bone. I frowned. Okay, but I'd like the meter on, please. He didn't even blink. Rain blurred the windows. The familiar glow of pubs and apartment blocks faded, until all I could see were dark warehouses and narrow lanes. The kind of streets you never noticed existed during the day. Where are we going? Shortcut. My stomach tightened. The rhythm of the windshield wipers felt too loud, like a metronome counting down to something. I pulled out my phone. 3% battery. No signal. I lifted my gaze toward the rearview mirror. That's when I realized it wasn't showing him. It reflected me, my pale face, the dark blur of the cab's back seat, but not the driver. His silhouette was there, yet the mirror was blank. Mister? No reply. I reached for the door handle. Jammed. I tried the other one. Locked. Then came the click. The unmistakable sound of automatic locks sealing shut. Please stop the car, I shouted. The taxi slowed. The tires hissed against the wet ground until we came to a full stop in the middle of an industrial alley. He turned his head for the first time. His face was pale, waxy, like a mannequin that had started to melt. Eyes gray and dull, lips cracked. We're here, he whispered. Here where? He smiled. A small, unnatural curve that didn't reach his eyes. Something in me snapped. I threw my shoulder against the door again. It didn't budge. My pulse pounded in my ears. I hit the window switch, and it rolled down agonizingly slow. Cold rain hit my face as I climbed halfway out. That's when I felt his breath near my ear. "You shouldn't have called me, Nina." He said my name. I screamed and tumbled out onto the wet road, scraping my knees on the gravel. I didn't look back. I just ran. I don't remember how long I ran. Minutes, maybe hours. My only goal was light. Any light at all. Finally, I saw it. The dull yellow glow of a petrol station sign. I burst through the glass doors, gasping for air. The clerk, a guy in his 20s with sleepy eyes, dropped his phone when he saw me. "Jesus, you okay, miss?" I turned, pointing back toward the street. A taxi. There was a man. But the street was empty. The rain still fell in thin sheets, but there were no headlights, no engine sound. Nothing. The clerk walked around the counter and peered out. "I don't see anyone." "I swear there was a car," I said. "A black taxi." He tried to. "Slow down," he said gently. "You're shaking." He gave me a towel and his phone to call the police. My fingers trembled so badly I nearly dropped it. When the officers arrived 20 minutes later, I told them everything. They searched the area. No taxi, no tire marks, no sign of another person. When they checked the CCTV footage from the petrol station, I felt sick. It showed me running into the station, alone. There was no car behind me, no headlights, just an empty, wet road. One officer asked if I'd been drinking. Another suggested maybe I'd fallen asleep in an alley and dreamt it. They drove me home around 4 a.m., left me with a brochure for victim support, and said they'd look into it. But they never found a single thing. 2 weeks passed. I tried to bury it. I went back to work, pretended to be fine. But every night I woke up at 1:37 a.m., the time I'd gotten into that cab, hearing the faint echo of his voice. Shortcut. I bought a new phone, deleted the ride apps. I walked everywhere, no matter how far. Then, one morning, my new phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Did you get home safe, Nina?" My stomach dropped. I dropped the phone, too. The timestamp, 1:37 a.m. I called the police again. They traced the number. It was unregistered, a temporary prepaid SIM. No record of origin. I started seeing a therapist. She said trauma can trick the brain into reliving fear. But I knew what I'd seen. I knew what I'd heard. One night, while trying to sleep, I heard tires outside my apartment. I looked through the blinds. A black taxi sat idling under the streetlight. Then it blinked its headlights twice. When I went back to look again, it was gone. It's been 6 years since that night. I live in Boston now, thousands of miles away. I don't tell people the story anymore. Not because I'm over it, but because no one ever believes it. But every Halloween around 1:30 a.m. I wake up. The rain always starts right then, even when the forecast says clear skies. Last year I was staying late at my office, finishing a project. When I came down to the lobby, the security guard was gone. Outside, the street was wet and empty. A single black cab waited at the curb. I froze. Its meter light glowed red. The window rolled down on its own. "You need a lift, love?" The voice was the same, gravel dragged across steel. I ran back inside, locked myself in the stairwell until sunrise. When I went out that morning, the street was dry. No tracks, no cab, no sign it had ever been there. People say you can't run from what haunts you. Maybe that's true. Maybe I never left that alley in Manchester. Maybe part of me is still there, running under the rain, trying to find the light. I still don't take taxis. I still check every rearview mirror I see. And sometimes when I close my eyes, I hear that voice behind me, whispering softly, "Shortcut." Halloween night 2014 started quiet. Too quiet for our neighborhood in Maple Hollow, Illinois. Normally, our street looked like a Halloween commercial. Glowing pumpkins, fake fog spilling over lawns, kids running in packs with candy bags swinging like pendulums. But that year, the air felt heavier, like the sky was holding its breath. My mom, Laura, still went all out. She'd been the Halloween queen of Maple Hollow since before I was born. Every year she planned the block party, carved 15 pumpkins, and made chili that smelled like fall itself. She believed holidays were the glue that keeps families together. But that night, the glue felt like it was coming undone. "Guess people finally grew up," I said, stringing fake cobwebs along our porch rail. Mom frowned. No, people love Halloween. Maybe it's the weather, or maybe we're too plain this year. I told your dad to get the good lights." She forced a smile, the kind moms give when they're trying to convince both of you. The wind picked up, scattering leaves across the yard. Dad was inside setting up the sound system, and I was supposed to grab the orange lights from the basement crawlspace. I hated that place. It wasn't a regular basement, just a narrow tunnel under the house, part dirt, part concrete, with beams that creaked like old bones. It always smelled of rust and damp earth. When I opened the little door in the hallway floor, warm air drifted up. Too warm. The furnace wasn't even running. "Mom," I called out, "you sure Dad didn't store anything else down here?" "No, honey, just decorations." I grabbed a flashlight and crouched inside. Dust floated in the beam like tiny ghosts. My knees pressed into cold earth as I shuffled forward. That's when I saw it. A wooden beam scratched over and over with tally marks. Dozens of them. Deep gouges, uneven, old. My chest tightened. It felt wrong, like someone had been counting the days down there. I grabbed the storage box and backed out fast, trying to ignore the faint hum of warm air breathing from deeper inside. The storm hit just after 9. Thunder rattled the windows. Rain drummed on the roof like someone pacing overhead. We finished decorating anyway. Pumpkins flickering weakly through the downpour, fake skeletons collapsing in the wind. No one came by, no trick-or-treaters, just us and the storm. Around midnight, I was in bed scrolling through my phone when I heard it. Screw rape. A slow, dragging sound under the floorboards. I froze. The sound came again, deliberate like metal against concrete. Scrape. Pause. Scrape. I threw off the blanket and stepped into the hall. The noise was coming from the crawl space, that stupid door I hadn't closed all the way. It was slightly open now, just enough to see darkness beyond. "Dad?" I called, my voice shaky. No answer. The scraping slowed, softer now, almost like someone was trying not to be heard. I backed up. My heartbeat was everywhere. In my ears, my throat, my teeth. Then my father appeared in the hallway, half asleep. "Aaron? What are you doing?" "Something's under the house," I said. He rubbed his eyes. Probably a raccoon. But before he could crouch down, there was a cough from beneath the floor. Muffled. Human. He froze. We both stared at the crawlspace door. "That's not an animal," he whispered. Mom came running, panicked. "What's going on?" "Call the cops," Dad said. "Now." She grabbed her phone, her hands trembling. "We think someone's under our house. Please hurry." The scraping stopped. The storm roared outside, lightning flashing across the living room. Then from the vent above the couch came a sound like someone clearing their throat. The police arrived within minutes, sirens cutting through the rain. 2 officers came inside, flashlights in hand. "Where's the access?" one asked. Dad pointed to the floor hatch. "There, it's tight, maybe 2 feet of clearance." The first officer crouched and shone his light inside. "Jesus," he muttered. The other leaned down beside him. "You seeing what I'm seeing?" I wanted to look but couldn't move. My legs felt heavy, cemented to the floor. They motioned for Dad to step back. "Stay clear," the first one said. "We've got someone in here." Minutes passed. I heard muffled talking, scraping, then a voice from below. "We've got him." They pulled a man out, filthy, hollow-eyed, clothes soaked in mud. His hands were trembling, his nails blackened with dirt. He couldn't have been more than 40, but he looked decades older. He clutched an empty water bottle and a small blanket. like a child. They sat him on the porch while paramedics checked him. "Has he been living down there?" Mom whispered. One officer nodded. "At least a week, maybe more. There's food wrappers, a lighter, and looks like he built a little nest near the furnace duct. He'd get warm air through the vents." I felt cold all over. The man's lips moved, but no sound came out. He was staring at me, eyes wide and distant, like he recognized me. That night, I didn't sleep. None of us did. The next morning, the house felt different. Every sound made me flinch. The hum of the fridge, the creak of floorboards, the whoosh of air from the vents. Police came back with crime scene tape, camera flashes filling the crawl space. "Why would he pick this house?" I asked one of them. He shrugged. "Maybe it was random, maybe not. He had a pattern." They showed us photos from under the house. Piles of trash, a small radio, and carved into the support beams, more tally marks. At least 30, each group of 5 carved deep, deliberate. But one stood out. Beside the last set of tallies was a single name scratched into the wood. Aaron. My throat closed. He knew my name? The officer hesitated. "Looks that way." Dad tightened his grip on my shoulder. "We're moving. Tonight." We never spent another night there. The police later confirmed the man was a transient who'd escaped a halfway house 5 miles away. He'd been breaking into homes, sleeping beneath them to stay warm. He didn't hurt anyone, not physically anyway. But for weeks afterward, I'd wake up to the faint sound of scraping. My brain replayed it over and over. Therapists said it was trauma. "Your mind is protecting itself," one told me. "You're trying to make sense of violation." But here's what haunts me still. No one could explain the tally marks. There were 31 of them, one for each day in October. The last one, the one with my name, had been carved fresh. The wood lighter than the rest, the edges rough. He wasn't counting days. He was counting people. Evil doesn't always knock on the door. Sometimes it's already inside. Curiosity can uncover what's meant to stay hidden, and safety is never something to take for granted. Be aware of your surroundings, listen to your instincts, and never ignore the small sounds beneath the noise. Because sometimes the scariest monsters aren't in the dark. They're the ones living quietly beneath your feet. I still remember the sound of the tires crunching on gravel that first day. The long dirt road winding through the trees, the steady hum of my dad's old Subaru, and the way my little sister Emma sang off-key in the back seat. I was 13, awkward, quiet, the kind of kid who carried a notebook everywhere and read Stephen King under the covers with a flashlight. It was October 28, 2008, when we pulled into Blackwater Lake Resort. My dad called it a family bonding trip, which really meant no TV, no phones, and lots of together time. The place looked peaceful, cabins tucked in a semicircle around a still, dark lake that mirrored the sky like glass. At check-in, the front desk woman smiled politely, but had that tired look of someone who'd seen too much of the same faces. "Stay on the marked trails," she said. "Rangers don't like kids wandering near the old logging paths." Dad laughed it off, but something in her tone wasn't joking. Our cabin smelled like pine and dust. Mom unpacked sandwiches, Emma explored the deck, and I sat by the window staring at the lake. The water barely rippled. No boats, no sound. It was too quiet. So quiet it felt like the woods were holding their breath. That night the resort threw a Halloween carnival. Strings of orange lights dangled between the pines. Paper ghosts fluttered in the breeze. Families danced around a bonfire while kids roasted marshmallows. I wore a cheap vampire cape because I'd forgotten a real costume. Emma twirled in her fairy wings, glow sticks flashing green and pink. During the haunted trail walk, I noticed him. A man stood just beyond the group, half hidden by the trees, a tall figure in a Hall Park Ranger's uniform. His hat was old-fashioned, wide-brimmed, the kind I'd only seen in black and white photos. He didn't move, didn't join in, just watched. When the trail ended, I turned to point him out to Emma, but he was gone. Later, near the lake, fog rolled across the water. I saw the same ranger again, standing by the shore, hands behind his back. He raised one arm, and Guy beckoned. "Do you see him?" I whispered to Emma. "Who?" she said. "There's nobody there." That's when I knew something wasn't right. That night, I couldn't sleep. The wind scraped branches against the window. Around midnight, I heard boots on gravel, slow, steady, moving outside our cabin. Crunch, pause, crunch. I pulled the curtain back just enough to peek. Nothing but darkness. But in the thin layer of condensation on the glass, I saw the faint outline of a ranger's hat. The next morning, muddy footprints led straight to our door and stopped right at the threshold. "Probably a deer," the manager said when Dad reported it. "They wander close sometimes." But I'd seen deer tracks before. These were boots. That afternoon, the sky turned gray. We hiked a short trail behind the cabins. I lagged behind, half hoping to spot the ranger again, half praying I wouldn't. Near the creek crossing, I saw something glinting under the water, a metal badge. When I reached for it, cold water numbed my fingers. The badge read, U.S. Forest Service, Blackwater Ranger Division. The year etched underneath, 1978. That night, rain hit hard. The wind howled like a warning. Dad locked the doors twice. I still couldn't sleep. At 2:47 a.m., I heard a voice outside. "Liam, come down to the dock. It's safe now." It wasn't loud. It was almost gentle. Emma stirred in her bed. "Who's that?" "Stay here," I whispered. When I looked through the window, a lantern glowed faintly by the lake. The ranger stood beside it, his hat tilted low, his face lost in shadow. "Your dad said you could help me," he called. "Someone's missing." Lightning flashed, and I saw his face, pale gray, eyes like glass marbles, mouth still, though the voice continued. "Come with me, Liam. You already know the way." I ran, slammed the cabin door shut, heart hammering. Dad burst from his room. "What's going on?" "The ranger, he's outside." We opened the door. Nothing. No footprints this time. Just the smell of lake water drifting through the air. We left at dawn. No one argued. Mom packed in silence. Emma wouldn't stop crying, and Dad drove without looking back. At the front desk, the same woman handed him the receipt. Her voice was low. "That trail should have been closed years ago." "What trail?" Dad asked. "The one by the lake." She hesitated. "A ranger drowned there in '78, looking for a lost boy. They never found his body." Dad's knuckles went white around the paper. "You should have told us." "Would it have mattered?" she said quietly. We didn't talk the whole way home. For years after, I had nightmares. Boots crunching on gravel, the smell of wet earth, the sound of that calm, steady voice calling my name. As I got older, I told myself it was all imagination. Kids see things when they're scared. I buried it deep, convinced that what I saw was just a story. Then, in 2023, I found that same badge in an old box of keepsakes Mom mailed me from her attic. I hadn't packed it. That was the first sign. The second was the letter. No return address. Just 4 words written in faded ink. Blackwater remembers you. I drove up to Blackwater Lake on October 30th, 2023. 15 years to the day. The resort was long shut down, cabins boarded, signs rotting, trees reclaiming the gravel road. The main lodge still stood, hollow and half collapsed. The lake hadn't changed. Still dark, still glassy, still too quiet. I parked by the same trailhead we'd used that night. The forest was heavy with mist. My breath came out in clouds. When I reached the dock, I saw it, floating near the center of the lake. A ranger's hat, half submerged, spinning slowly. My stomach turned. I thought about leaving right then, but something pulled me closer, a whisper of movement, maybe memory. I stepped onto the dock. The boards groaned beneath my feet. The air smelled like rust and pine sap. The hat drifted closer. Beneath it, something pale shimmered under the surface. A hand, motionless, palm facing up. I stumbled back, slipped on the wet boards, and hit the ground hard. When I looked again, the hand was gone. The water stilled. That's when I heard him. His voice, same tone, same calm. "Good to see you again, Liam. The woods remember." I ran until I couldn't breathe. When they found my car days later, it was parked where the forest road met the highway. Driver's door open, keys in the ignition. My phone lay on the seat, still recording a voice memo. Just wind and faint splashes of water. No one's sure how long I wandered after that. The hikers who found me said I was standing knee-deep in the lake, staring out at nothing. I didn't remember getting there. They told me the resort was finally being demolished, the area condemned after multiple drownings over the years. But sometimes in dreams, or maybe memories, I still hear him. Boots on gravel, a lantern swaying in fog, a voice whispering my name like a promise. When I wake, the smell of lake water lingers in my room, and I swear I hear the echo of that same quiet phrase. The woods remember. Not every mystery needs an answer. Curiosity can pull you toward things that were never meant to be found. Sometimes the past isn't waiting for closure, it's waiting for company. And when the world tells you to stay on the marked path, it's not always superstition, sometimes it's survival. It had been a long time since I believed in ghosts. Back when I was a kid, my grandmother used to tell me stories about spirits wandering the moors, about old houses that breathed and roads where people vanished without a trace. I'd always laughed them off. I was a man of reason, a night shift worker, paying bills, trying to make it through each month in one piece. But that all changed one Halloween night, when I drove through the rain-soaked streets of Portsmouth and met a little girl who shouldn't have been there. It was October 31st, close to 2 in the morning. I'd just finished my late shift at the Crow's End Cafe, a small seaside diner that stayed open for drunks, fishermen, and night owls like me. The place smelled of burnt espresso and fried onions, and the only light came from the buzzing neon sign that spelled Crows in flickering blue. My back ached, my eyes burned, and the rain outside hadn't let up since sunset. I'd rented a small black Vauxhall Astra for the weekend. My own car had broken down again, and I remember sitting there in the driver's seat, watching the raindrops race down the windshield. The wipers thudded back and forth like a heartbeat. The whole city seemed asleep. Even the harbor lights looked ghostly through the fog. That's when I saw her. A small figure stood by the roadside, maybe 8 or 9 years old, her pink princess dress soaked and clinging to her knees. A paper crown sat crooked on her head, and her hair, long, brown, and wet, framed her pale face. She wasn't crying, just standing there, barefoot, her arms wrapped around herself. I rolled my window down, rain misting my face. "Hey, sweetheart, are you okay? You lost?" She didn't answer. She just looked at me, then slowly raised one small hand and pointed down the street. A narrow residential lane lined with old brick houses. I hesitated. Every instinct said this wasn't right. No parent lets a kid wander alone at 1 in the morning. But the sight of her shivering in that rain made my chest tighten. I couldn't just drive off. "Okay," I said softly, opening my door. "I'll walk you home, yeah? Where's your house?" The girl didn't speak, only nodded slightly. Her hand was ice cold when she slipped it into mine. I told myself she was just scared, maybe in shock. Kids freeze up like that sometimes. The rain soaked through my jacket as we walked, her shoes squelching in puddles, the sound echoing through the foggy street. She kept pointing straight ahead. After a few blocks, we reached an old 2-story house with ivy crawling up its walls. Number 47 carved into the gatepost. A faint light glowed in the hallway window, the only sign of life on that street. "This your home?" I asked. She didn't nod this time, just stared at the front door. I stepped forward and knocked twice. For a moment, nothing. Then the door creaked open, and an elderly woman appeared. frail, pale, her gray hair tied back with a black ribbon. She blinked at me, confused, holding the edge of the door like she might fall if she let go. "I'm sorry to wake you," I said quickly. "I found this little girl outside. She pointed me here." The woman's face went still. Her eyes widened slightly. Then, in a trembling voice, she said, "You shouldn't have brought her here." I turned to look at the girl, but she was gone. For a long second, I just stood there, rain dripping from my hair, my mind refusing to process what had happened. She was right here," I stammered, spinning around. "She was holding my hand." The woman's eyes filled with tears. "Please," she whispered, "come inside, before someone sees." I hesitated but followed her in. The house smelled of damp wood and lavender, and a small candle flickered on the hallway table. She led me into a sitting room cluttered with framed photos, all of them showing the same little girl. Same pink dress, same paper crown. The woman sat down heavily on a floral armchair. Her name was Emily Hanwell, she said, voice breaking. "She was my granddaughter." "Was?" I asked softly. She nodded, eyes distant. 31 years ago tonight, a truck driver didn't see her crossing the road. She was wearing that princess costume, going to show her friends. They never even found the crown." Her lips trembled. "Every Halloween since, she comes back, waiting for someone kind enough to walk her home." A chill ran through me so deep I could barely speak. "You're saying that girl, that was a ghost," she finished quietly. "Though I think ghost isn't the right word. She's lost. Not angry, just lost." I looked down. My jacket sleeve was smeared with faint brown marks, muddy handprints, small ones. I didn't know what to say. The rain outside beat harder against the window, and somewhere in the distance, a clock chimed 2. When I finally left, the woman pressed something into my hand, an old photograph of Emily smiling, missing a front tooth, her paper crown slightly tilted. "If she finds you again," she said, "just tell her she's home now." I nodded numbly and stepped back into the rain. The street was empty, but the air felt charged, alive, like something unseen was still watching. I drove home in silence, the photo sitting on the passenger seat, and tried to convince myself I'd hallucinated the whole thing. But when I woke up the next morning, there were tiny, muddy footprints on the floor by my front door. The following week, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her, that soaked little princess, her crown glinting under the streetlight. I'd turn over trying to forget, but something in me kept replaying that night. The smell of rain, the coldness of her hand. By Thursday, I gave in and drove back to number 47. The ivy looked thicker, the windows darker. But in the hallway window, a single candle mar flickered. The same one, I realized, that had been burning that night. I knocked. No answer. The old woman, Mrs. Hanwell, I later learned, had died 2 days after I'd seen her. Heart failure, the neighbor said. The house was empty now. Still, every evening around midnight, I'd drive past. The candle burned on the windowsill. Sometimes it flickered when I slowed down, like a signal. I told myself it was just a trick of the wind, maybe some leftover wax still melting down. But one night, as I sat parked across the street, I saw something in the reflection. A faint figure by the gate. Small, still, wearing pink. "Emily," I whispered without thinking. She turned, and though her face was pale and strange, she smiled. I started leaving flowers at the gate, white lilies, sometimes roses. I didn't tell anyone why. It felt wrong to let her story fade, to let her keep walking those empty streets alone. But each time I came, I'd find the flowers rearranged, not scattered, not ruined, just moved, like a child had touched them. That Halloween came again sooner than I expected. Rain, same as before. I worked late at the cafe, trying to ignore the date, but by 12:30 a.m., I couldn't resist. I drove out to number 47. The candle burned brighter than ever. I parked across the street. For a while, nothing moved. Then, through the mist, I saw her, Emily, standing by the roadside exactly where I'd first seen her a year ago. She looked the same. Pink dress, paper crown, wet hair clinging to her face. I stepped out of the car slowly. "Emily," I said, "you don't have to wait anymore." She tilted her head, as if listening. The rain drummed harder. "You're home now," I whispered. "Your grandmother's waiting." For a moment, the streetlight flickered and she smiled faintly. Then she took a small step backward and faded, not vanishing abruptly but dissolving into the rain, like mist meeting the air. When I turned back toward the house, the candle had gone out. It's been 5 years since that night. I don't work at the Crow's End anymore. I moved to a different town, got a steadier job, tried to start fresh. But every Halloween, when rain begins to fall and the world feels quiet and strange, I see her in my memory. The little girl by the road, still waiting, still smiling. Sometimes I think I hear her voice when I drive late at night. Once I even glanced at my rearview mirror and thought I saw a pink sleeve. I didn't turn around. I just whispered, "You're home, Emily," and the feeling faded. I still keep that photograph on my dashboard. Her crown tilted, her grin wide and gap-toothed. I don't know if spirits truly exist or if grief just leaves echoes behind. But I know what I saw, what I felt. I know kindness can reach across even death's quiet divide. Because sometimes, compassion isn't about saving someone's life. It's about helping a lost soul find peace. When I left Boston, I told myself I was chasing peace. What I didn't realize then was that peace can sometimes look a lot like silence, and silence can hide almost anything. I'd spent 36 years in the city, long enough to memorize the rhythm of sirens, traffic lights, and the daily grind of people too busy to look up. After my mother died that spring, I found myself staring at her empty apartment and thinking about all the noise that filled the spaces we never noticed. The noise of endings, the noise of regret. So when a listing popped up for a 2-bedroom house in a small Vermont town called Brenton Hollow, I clicked without thinking twice. The photos showed sugar maples blazing red, a white picket fence, and a porch with chipped blue paint that looked almost kind. It felt like an invitation. The first morning I arrived, mist curled around the trees, and the air smelled of pine and wood smoke. The house stood near the end of a Willow Lane, where the road narrowed and the forest pressed close. Neighbors stopped by within hours, a casserole from Mrs. Carver across the street, a jar of apple butter from the Connollys next door. Their kindness made the move feel right, though I noticed how every conversation ended with the same warning. "Skip the last house on the lane, honey," Mrs. Carver said, leaning on my porch rail. "Number 19. Been empty 20 years. Let it stay that way." I laughed it off. "A haunted house story? Every town's got one." Mrs. Carver's smile didn't reach her eyes. "This one's not a story, dear. It's a wound." That first night I unpacked boxes until after midnight. Outside, the woods whispered with wind and crickets. Somewhere far down the road, a loose shutter banged in the gusts. I told myself I'd found quiet, the kind of quiet I'd wanted since the divorce, since the long stretch of loneliness that followed. But the quiet in Brenton Hollow wasn't empty. It was listening. By late October, Willow Lane glowed orange with pumpkins and porch lights. Kids strung paper bats across mailboxes, and every night smelled like cinnamon and cold leaves. For the first time in months, I felt part of something ordinary again. Halloween arrived on a Saturday. I brewed hot cider, set out a bowl of candy, and curled up by the window to watch the parade of trick-or-treaters. Pirates, witches, tiny vampires, and the usual lineup. Their laughter drifted up the street like music. Around 8:30, the stream of visitors thinned. That's when I saw her. A little girl, maybe 7, wearing an old-fashioned blue dress, trimmed with lace. She carried a cloth bag instead of a plastic bucket, and her bare feet splashed through puddles as if she didn't feel the cold. Something about her posture, stiff, careful, made me sit up. She walked past every house without stopping. Past Mrs. Carver's glowing jack-o'-lanterns, past the Connolly's porch. She didn't even glance toward my lighted steps. Instead, she went straight down the lane toward OE, number 19. The house everyone told me to ignore. Its paint peeled in long gray strips. The yard was overgrown, the porch half sunk. No light showed behind the windows. Still, the girl climbed the steps and knocked twice. The door opened. I saw it. I swear I saw it. A pale hand reached out from the darkness and dropped something into her bag. Then the door closed again. The girl turned, smiled faintly, and skipped away. I stood on my porch gripping my mug so hard the handle cracked. When I blinked, the street was empty. Later that night I replayed my doorbell camera footage. There she was, in blue, walking toward the old house. But on the recording the door never opened. No hand, no movement. She only stood there for 30 seconds, then turned back the way she came. I told myself it was the angle, bad lighting. But deep down, I already knew something wasn't right. The next morning I carried my confusion to Mrs. Carver's kitchen. The smell of coffee and cinnamon rolls almost made me forget how cold my hands felt. When I told her what I'd seen, her face drained of color. "There's no one in that house," she said quietly. "Hasn't been for years." She told me about the Marins, a couple who'd lived there with their daughter, Lila. Halloween night, 1998, the girl went missing. They found her candy bag floating in the quarry pond beyond the woods. Mr. Marin drank himself to death a year later. His wife moved away. I sat in silence, the story pressing down like fog. Then who opened the door? Mrs. Carver stared into her cup. "Some things don't stay gone, Lena, especially when kindness calls to them." That night I couldn't sleep. At 2:17 a.m., 3 slow knocks echoed through my hallway. My throat closed. I crept to the window. On the porch lay a single piece of candy, red and gold stripes on wax paper, the kind my grandmother used to keep in her purse. I didn't open the door. But when I finally dared to look again at dawn, the candy was still there. On the wrapper, written in a child's scrawl, were 5 words. "Thank you for seeing me." I drove to the library the next day. The local historian, an elderly man with kind eyes, helped me dig through microfilm. It didn't take long to find the headline: 7-year-old drowns in quarry pond, Halloween tragedy. The article described Laya Marin's disappearance. A photo showed her in that same blue dress. Beneath the picture, the caption read, "Beloved daughter remembered for her sweet nature and love of candy." When I left the library, snow threatened in the clouds. The world felt suddenly thinner, as though one wrong step could tear through it. Back home, I found the candy bowl on my counter half empty. I live alone. The front door was locked. That evening I sat on my porch with a candle burning beside me. "Lila," I whispered into the cold, "I'm sorry." The trees rustled. Somewhere far off, water dripped steadily, like footsteps fading toward the quarry. I don't know why, but I followed the sound. The path wound behind the houses and down through birches until it opened on the black water of the old quarry. The surface was still as glass. On the far shore, something small and white floated. A ribbon. When the wind shifted, I heard a faint giggle. "Thank you," it said, barely more than air. I backed away slowly, heart hammering. When I returned home, the candle on my porch had burned out, but the air smelled faintly of sugar. 5 years have passed. Each Halloween, I still light a candle and set out a bowl of red and gold candies. The neighbors tease me for it, call it my Boston superstition. I just smile and tell them some traditions matter. I moved once, only for a year, but peace never followed me the way that haunting did. So I came back. The lane feels different now, less lonely. Some nights I catch the brief shimmer of blue near the end of the street, a flicker that fades before I can be sure. This year a young couple bought my old place. They found a box in the attic filled with candies wrapped in the same striped paper, each labeled in a shaky hand. For Lila. They asked if I'd left it. I told them the truth, that sometimes a promise keeps itself. On Halloween night, as the fog rolled in and the sugar maples bowed in the wind, I saw her one last time. She stood by the gate of number 19, barefoot, smiling. A warm light spilled from the doorway. Inside, a woman's shadow moved, gentle, waiting. The door opened wider, and the girl stepped through. For the first time, the house at the end of Willow Lane looked alive. I used to think moving to the country would fix everything. That's what people said anyway. Get away from the noise, start over, breathe. After the layoffs and the endless arguments, Daniel and I needed that. Or maybe I just needed to believe we did. When Uncle Eli passed, the letter came from some lawyer in Ash Hollow, 3 pages of legal talk that ended with a single line. The farmhouse and surrounding land to be inherited by my niece, Sophie Gray. I'd only been there once as a kid. I remembered the porch swing and the cornfields that went on forever, but mostly I remembered Eli's quiet. He barely spoke above a whisper. My mom used to say he was a man of the soil, whatever that meant. It's quiet, safe, and it's free, I told Daniel when I showed him the letter. He looked up from his laptop, half listening. It's in the middle of nowhere. Exactly, I said. We could use nowhere for a while. So, one gray October morning, we packed our lives into a rented U-Haul, what was left of them, and drove north. Oliver sat in the back seat with his dinosaur backpack and toy trucks, asking every 10 minutes if there'd be Wi-Fi at the new house. The drive took 6 hours. The further we went, the more the landscape flattened out. Endless fields, rusted mailboxes, roads that seemed to dissolve into the mist. When we finally pulled into the gravel driveway, the farmhouse looked like something from an old postcard. White siding, peeling paint, a red barn in the distance. But the air felt heavy, thick in a way that pressed against my chest. Across the field stood a scarecrow, tall, lopsided, its head a burlap sack stitched with black thread. Its smile was crooked and too wide. The flannel shirt it wore looked almost new, which made the rest of it seem older, wrong somehow. Creepy, Daniel muttered. I tried to laugh. Guess Uncle Eli didn't like crows. That first night, we opened windows to let in the country air. It smelled of dirt and old wood. Daniel fell asleep watching TV on his laptop. I stood by the kitchen window, looking out at the field. The scarecrow was a dark silhouette against the sky. It faced the road, or at least, that's how I remembered it. The days blurred into a rhythm. We cleaned, unpacked, fixed what we could. Daniel looked for remote work. I painted the kitchen walls a softer shade of yellow. Oliver explored the property with the boundless energy only 6-year-olds have. For a while, it felt almost peaceful. Until one morning, I noticed the scarecrow had turned. It faced the house now, head tilted slightly to one side. I stood at the sink, coffee mug in hand, staring out the window. When Daniel came down, I asked, "Did you move that thing?" He laughed. Yeah, right. Maybe the wind spun it around. But the wind couldn't twist rope that tightly. That night, after we put Oliver to bed, Daniel and I sat on the porch. The fields glowed faintly in the moonlight. Somewhere, an owl hooted. Place still creeps me out, he said, sipping his beer. Eli must have liked it. He lived here till he died. Yeah, and nobody said how he died, he said. I hadn't thought about that. The lawyer never mentioned it. Mom didn't know either. I told myself it didn't matter. People die in quiet towns all the time. Around midnight, I woke to a sound like whispering. I thought it was wind pushing through the corn, but then I heard it again, faint, rhythmic, almost human. I leaned toward the window, heart pounding. Oliver. It was so soft, I almost convinced myself it wasn't real. "Danny," I whispered, shaking him awake. He groaned. "What? Do you hear that?" He sat up, listened, then frowned. "It's just the wind, Soph. Go back to sleep." But the voice stayed with me long after the sound faded. I couldn't stop wondering, what if Uncle Eli hadn't died naturally? By the end of that week, I was running on coffee and nerves. Every morning, the scarecrow faced a different direction. Some days toward the road, others toward the barn. On Halloween morning, I found something on the porch, a corn husk doll tied together with twine and a strip of red yarn around its neck. Oliver was holding it when I came out. "Where did you get that?" I asked. He smiled. "The man in the field gave it to me." My blood turned to ice. "What man?" He pointed toward the scarecrow. I ran out to the field. The air was cold enough to sting my lungs. The scarecrow stood motionless, arms out, flannel fluttering in the wind. When I got closer, I saw fresh footprints in the mud, child-sized. That night the storm came. The wind rattled the windows. Thunder rolled like falling stones. Daniel fell asleep on the couch, TV flickering across his face. I checked every lock twice before finally lying down beside Oliver. Sometime after 3 a.m., lightning flashed so bright it woke me. The bed was empty. The window was open. Curtains whipped against the walls. "Oliver!" I screamed, racing down the hall. Daniel bolted upright, dazed. "What's wrong?" "He's gone." We tore through the house, then out into the rain. The flashlight beams cut through the mist, landing on the field. The scarecrow stood where it always did. But something was different. Its head looked swollen, the burlap stretched. Daniel yanked the sack open. Straw poured out, just straw. Then the whisper came again, closer this time. "He's playing. With me." We ran. The police arrived just after dawn. Mud covered the porch, the field, my shoes. Oliver's footprints ended halfway through the cornrows as if he'd vanished mid-step. A detective named Harper took notes while the others combed the property. "You said you found this doll yesterday?" she asked, holding it in a gloved hand. "Yes. My son said someone gave it to him." "Any neighbors nearby?" "Closest one's 2 miles out." She nodded, expression unreadable. Later, one officer pointed at the scarecrow. "Strange thing. This shirt's been repaired a bunch of times. Stitching looks old, like someone's been patching it up for years." Daniel stood silent beside me. When night came, they still hadn't found Oliver. Harper promised they'd keep searching, but her tone already sounded like a condolence. Daniel barely spoke for days. He wandered the property, calling Oliver's name until his voice cracked. I stayed inside, sitting by the window, staring at that field. Every time I looked, I could swear the scarecrow's smile was wider. 2 weeks later, we left. I couldn't stand the place anymore. The silence, the smell of dirt that clung to everything. The farmhouse sold fast to another young couple from Chicago. They sent a Christmas card that year. The woman's handwriting was neat and bubbly. "We love it here," she wrote. "Even the scarecrow feels like part of the family." I threw the card away. Months passed. I started therapy. Daniel and I tried to piece ourselves back together, but there was always this distance between us, a silence that felt heavier than words. One night, I saw a photo on social media. The same woman, standing in front of the farmhouse with her daughter, smiling. Behind them, the scarecrow stood tall in the field. The caption read, "Our little one talks to him all the time. She says he tells her stories." I closed the app. I didn't need to know more. But sometimes, late at night, I still hear it. Faint, like a breeze moving through dry corn. A whisper just beneath my thoughts. "Come play." And I wonder if some things we call monsters are really just reflections of loneliness, of grief, of the things we ignore until they take shape and stare back. Evil doesn't always wear a monstrous face. Sometimes it grows quietly in the spaces we neglect. The silence after an argument, the guilt we never speak aloud, the fears we refuse to face. If we turn away long enough, even the fields meant to give us peace can learn to whisper our names,